But she chose not to be here.
Judge, can you hear me? Oh, okay.
Judge Liman just stormed out of the courtroom after Blake Lively's latest victim spilled more shocking details. Apparently, Blake's brands were secretly poisoning customers with cheap products, and guess what? This is just the beginning. The judge? Well, he was done. Absolutely fed up with how a case that was supposed to be about harassment has turned into an endless rabbit hole of scandals. Blake Lively's legal saga began as a single, isolated lawsuit claiming sexual harassment. What seemed like a typical high-profile case quickly spiraled out of control, turning into a full-blown courtroom drama that no one could have predicted. Initially set for trial in 2026, the case, which was supposed to be a simple matter of a workplace harassment accusation, has now plunged into a labyrinth of allegations, lawsuits, and high-stakes revelations. As the legal machinery began grinding away, it became clear that this was no ordinary celebrity dispute, but a sprawling web of accusations spanning multiple aspects of Blake Lively's life and career. How did something so seemingly straightforward unravel so quickly, and what does this mean for the future of Hollywood's most glamorous stars? Originally, the case appeared to be about a single incident, an inappropriate comment, and subsequent allegation of harassment. But by the time the pre-hearing phase was underway, new claims began surfacing from all angles, turning this legal battle into something much bigger. The decision to expedite the process sent shockwaves through both the legal and entertainment worlds, as it became evident that Blake was no longer facing just one accuser, but a growing number of individuals coming forward with disturbing stories. As the weeks progressed, the case's timeline rapidly accelerated. What had been intended as a far-off courtroom event had been moved into pre-hearing stages almost immediately, with the legal teams on both sides scrambling to adjust. Courtrooms were flooded with testimonies, motions, and, most notably, the creeping sense that Blake Lively's carefully crafted public persona was under siege. As each new allegation emerged, it became clear that the matter was far from a simple misunderstanding. It was now a multifaceted legal battle with the potential to reshape the public's view of Lively forever. And just how much deeper could this go before it finally breaks? The judge, already under pressure from weeks of drawn-out legal squabbles, began to show signs of visible frustration. By the fourth day of hearings, what had been expected to be a dry procedural meeting transformed into something entirely different. New revelations about Lively's behavior, coupled with increasingly aggressive claims against her, turned the courtroom from a place of legal resolution to a spectacle of raw, emotional tension. The case was no longer about a single accusation. It was about the unraveling of a superstar's reputation, and it was happening in real time. But was the case simply becoming too much for the judge to bear? The courtroom buzzed with unease as the judge seemed to lose control of the situation. Normally stoic, the judge's reactions became increasingly erratic, signaling that this case was no longer just a matter of legal procedure. With each new bombshell dropped, each story more scandalous than the last, the weight of the courtroom's atmosphere shifted. What was supposed to be a moment of legal clarity had now turned into a courtroom theater, with Lively herself caught in the center of it all. No one in the room could deny the palpable tension as more and more damaging information was revealed. How much longer could the legal system, or even the judge, hold up under this pressure? The fourth day in court is where everything changed. Testimonies were heard, accusations piled up, and then came a twist no one had seen coming. A revelation about Blake Lively that would shock even her most ardent supporters. As an employee took the stand, details of Lively's personal behavior emerged, painting a picture of someone far removed from the polished, perfect image that had been sold to the public. What began as a personal lawsuit now had the makings of a much larger scandal. It wasn't just sexual harassment that was on the table anymore. It was abuse, exploitation, and the darker side of Lively's rise to stardom. Can Blake Lively survive the storm now raging around her? The shocking revelations continued, keeping the media in a frenzy. The core of the case shifted dramatically, forcing everyone to confront uncomfortable truths about the person they thought they knew. It became clear that Lively was facing much more than a battle for her career. She was facing a fight for her legacy. The first whistleblower to come forward with allegations against Blake Lively did so in a quiet, almost reserved manner. Yet, the details they shared would reverberate far beyond the courtroom. The former employee, who chose to remain anonymous, spoke about the abuse they allegedly endured while working under Blake and her mother, Elaine Lively. What started as a simple complaint about working conditions quickly escalated into shocking claims of psychological and physical mistreatment. According to the whistleblower, the Liveleys were known to manipulate and belittle their staff, making them perform tasks that many considered ethically questionable. These were not just the petty complaints of a disgruntled worker. The testimonies painted a much darker picture of the internal culture at Lively's empire. How far did the Lively's control over their staff really extend, and what were the long-term effects on those who worked for them? The allegations became more troubling as the days went on. Employees came forward to describe how they were regularly subjected to verbal abuse, which at times crossed into physical intimidation. One former assistant recounted instances where Blake allegedly mocked their appearance, publicly humiliated them for minor mistakes, and demanded they carry out menial tasks without any regard for their well-being. The most disturbing part of these accounts was the atmosphere of fear that permeated the office, where workers reportedly felt their jobs were constantly at risk for the slightest error. It wasn't just about getting things wrong. It was about surviving an environment where personal boundaries were routinely overstepped. What does it say about a workplace when the very leaders in charge foster such an environment of fear and humiliation? But perhaps the most explosive revelation was the claim about Blake Lively's personal conduct with a young male employee. According to the testimony, when this employee was just 20 years old, he was subjected to unwanted advances and inappropriate behavior from Blake herself. He described how she made lewd comments about his physical appearance and touched him in ways that made him feel deeply uncomfortable. The accuser testified that Blake's behavior wasn't just suggestive, it was aggressive. He recounted a specific instance where she allegedly made crude remarks about his clothing and even touched his personal areas in an attempt to mock him. This was not a simple office flirtation. It was a calculated effort to humiliate and assert dominance over him. What kind of celebrity acts with such blatant disregard for others' boundaries? And why was this allowed to happen? These claims, while incredibly shocking, were only the beginning. As more people came forward, the depth of the abuse became clearer. Employees who had once been loyal to Blake were now speaking out, describing a toxic work environment where favoritism and manipulation were the norms. One former employee revealed that they had been coerced into covering up certain activities, including the mishandling of product safety and failure to meet legal standards. They explained that Elaine Lively was often the driving force behind many of the unethical decisions, pressuring staff to comply with her demands no matter the cost. It wasn't just about getting things done, it was about doing them in a way that would benefit the Lively brand, even if it meant cutting corners or ignoring serious concerns. How deep does this web of manipulation go, and what does it say about the culture of power in Hollywood? As these disturbing stories started to surface, the public's perception of Blake Lively began to shift. Once considered a role model for young women everywhere, she was now painted as the face of a Hollywood empire that thrived on exploitation. No longer was she just a celebrity caught in a scandal. She was now viewed as a symbol of an industry willing to tolerate unacceptable behavior as long as it meant financial gain. The damage to Blake's public image was immediate and severe. What was once a carefully constructed brand of philanthropy, family values, and glamour now seemed hollow. In the eyes of many, Lively's wholesome persona had been nothing more than a facade masking darker truths about her business practices and personal behavior. Can Blake Lively ever hope to recover from this shift in public perception? Or has her legacy been forever tarnished? The legal fallout from these allegations also began to take shape. lawyers for Blake Lively and her mother, Elaine, immediately went on the defensive, attempting to discredit the whistleblowers and question the validity of their claims. But the testimonies were so compelling that even the most hardened legal professionals found it difficult to ignore them. As the case moved forward, it became clear that this wasn't just about Blake's personal conduct. It was about the culture she had cultivated within her business, which seemed to reward manipulation and exploitation. The mounting pressure was beginning to weigh on both the Lively family and their legal teams. What once seemed like a simple harassment case now felt like a lawsuit with the potential to reveal a systematic pattern of abuse and corruption. The first hint of trouble came with the sexual harassment allegations, which quickly set the stage for a series of explosive revelations. What was initially a solitary claim soon turned into a tidal wave of accusations, spreading across various aspects of Lively's personal and professional life. Social media, always a battleground for public opinion, exploded with both support and condemnation. While some fans rushed to Blake's defense, others began to question the very foundation of the perfect celebrity image she had worked so hard to build. As more whistleblowers come forward with disturbing stories of abuse, manipulation, and unethical behavior, the public's perception of Blake began to shift. How could a well-constructed image so meticulously built over years have fallen apart so quickly? Social media's reaction to the allegations was nothing short of explosive. On platforms like Twitter and Instagram, users began dissecting every public appearance, every carefully staged photo, and every glamorous red carpet moment. As the scandal spread, some fans took to defending Blake, insisting that the allegations were a product of false accusations or media bias. Others, however, couldn't ignore the mounting evidence and the testimonies from employees who claimed to have been mistreated by Blake and her family. The overwhelming public backlash was palpable, and Blake's name became synonymous with scandal rather than stardom. What was once considered a squeaky clean reputation was now seen by many as nothing more than a carefully constructed facade. Would Blake Lively ever be able to regain the public's trust, or had the damage already been done? Behind every powerful figure in Hollywood, there is often someone who pulls the strings in the background, someone who influences the decisions and shapes the narrative. In Blake's case, that person was her mother, Elaine Lively. For years, Elaine had been her daughter's closest confidant and manager, playing a significant role in crafting Blake's public image. But now, as the legal battles intensified, Elaine's involvement came under intense scrutiny. Allegations of her manipulative behavior surfaced, suggesting that she was just as complicit in the toxic workplace environment as her daughter. The mother-daughter duo's tight-knit control over Blake's career became a focal point of the growing scandal, with critics questioning how much of Blake's image and success had been shaped by her mother's behind-the-scenes influence. Was Elaine Lively the mastermind behind Blake's empire, or was she merely a pawn in her daughter's fall from grace? In the face of mounting criticism, the media's role in protecting Blake Lively became increasingly evident. For years, Hollywood's elite have relied on their PR teams to shield them from the public's judgment, and Blake was no exception. In the early days of the scandal, her team worked tirelessly to push back against the accusations, attempting to shape the narrative in Blake's favor. However, as the truth began to seep out, the media's role became less about protecting Blake and more about exposing the truth. The very same media outlets that once hailed her as an icon now questioned her integrity. This shift from celebrity spin to reality was jarring, and it became clear that the power of the media, once a tool to amplify her image, was now a force working against her. Could Blake Lively ever hope to escape the media storm, or was she forever trapped in the narrative of scandal? The trial had already been a tense affair, but it reached an unprecedented moment of drama on the fourth day, when the judge, who had already shown signs of frustration, unexpectedly walked out of the courtroom. The cause? A new wave of accusations, each more shocking than the last, had just been laid before the court. The judge had been trying to maintain control of a case that was rapidly spiraling out of hand, But the mounting pressure proved to be too much. The breaking point came when a new whistleblower took the stand, revealing further disturbing details of Blake's behavior. The courtroom, which had already been charged with tension, suddenly became a battleground of emotions as Blake's team scrambled to defend her, while her accusers presented more damning evidence. Why did the judge leave, and how much longer could this case go on before it reached its breaking point? Blake, who had managed to maintain her composure up until that point, was visibly shaken by the developments. The chaos in the courtroom was palpable. Her legal team, who had expected a much quieter day of proceedings, found themselves caught off guard as the floodgates opened. The new allegations hit Blake like a freight train, and her usually controlled demeanor began to crack under the pressure. While she tried to keep her emotions in check, it was clear that the reality of her situation was sinking in. For a woman who had always prided herself on being in control, the uncontrollable nature of this trial was overwhelming. Could Blake maintain her composure, or was the pressure of the trial too much for even her to handle? As the new allegations were presented, it became clear that Blake's legal team was struggling to keep up. They had hoped that the trial would be resolved quickly, but with each passing day, it became more complicated. The barrage of accusations left them scrambling to formulate a defense, trying to discredit the whistleblowers and cast doubt on their testimonies. Yet, the evidence presented was so overwhelming that even the most experienced legal minds found it hard to navigate the labyrinth of claims. Blake Lively's legal troubles, which began as a single sexual harassment claim, quickly evolved into a sprawling web of accusations that threatened to unravel her entire career. What initially seemed like a solitary legal issue snowballed into multiple lawsuits, each revealing a darker side of the actress's once perfect public image. For years, Blake had been celebrated as Hollywood's sweetheart, charming, polished, and seemingly the epitome of grace. But as the scandals began to emerge, so did the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. The first accusation, a claim of sexual harassment, was only the beginning. Blake's lawyers initially believed they could quickly resolve the matter, perhaps with a settlement, but what followed was a series of allegations, each more damning than the last. A former employee came forward with allegations of abuse, detailing how they were manipulated, belittled, and forced to overlook ethical concerns under Blake and her mother, Elaine Lively's leadership. The emotional toll on these employees was made clear through their testimonies. Blake's brand, which had been marketed as embodying strength and integrity, now seemed like nothing more than a carefully curated image designed to hide the darker truth. As the lawsuits piled up, the media's role in shaping Blake's public persona began to unravel. What had once been a well-crafted, controlled narrative was now being replaced with the truth, uncomfortable and raw. Social media, always a powerful force, turned against her. Fans and followers who had once viewed her as a role model now found themselves questioning her integrity. Her carefully chosen philanthropic endeavors began to seem like hollow PR stunts. The accusations of fraud, employee mistreatment, and other legal violations began to paint Blake as someone who was not the friendly, supportive celebrity everyone had once admired, but instead a product of Hollywood's toxic underbelly. What had once seemed like a clean-cut image was now becoming a symbol of exploitation and deceit. In an attempt to steer the narrative back in her favor, Blake tried to deflect the attention onto others, the most notable being actor Justin Baldoni. She accused him of making an inappropriate comment about her perfume during a public event, which she claimed made her feel uncomfortable. What was presented as a simple compliment in Baldoni's eyes quickly became a major point of contention in Blake's legal strategy. The accusation appeared to many as either a genuine case of harassment or, alternatively, as an attempt to shift the public's focus from the mounting allegations against her. Some people saw Blake as the victim of an innocent comment, while others believed it was a convenient tactic to play the victim amidst more severe accusations. The public's reaction to Blake's claim against Baldoni was polarized. Supporters of Blake rallied behind her, expressing that it was crucial to take her feelings seriously. However, Many others, particularly those already skeptical of her behavior due to the mounting legal issues, dismissed the claim as an exaggerated attempt to avoid facing more serious accusations. On social media, the backlash against her grew stronger, and the public was divided on whether the harassment claim was legitimate or simply a tool for damage control. As the trial wore on, the focus shifted from addressing the core allegations against Blake to defending or questioning her actions toward Baldoni. Justin Baldoni, meanwhile, was left to defend himself against the claims, which he had never anticipated. The actor's response was calm and measured. He insisted that his comment was intended as a harmless compliment, and he regretted if it had made Blake uncomfortable. Despite his efforts to clear his name, the accusation left him vulnerable to public scrutiny. He found himself caught in the crossfire of a media storm that was increasingly difficult to navigate. What had been a routine professional interaction between two actors was now a spectacle that dominated headlines. The courtroom became a theater for public opinion, with both sides being relentlessly examined by an increasingly judgmental audience. As Blake continued to battle accusations, the number of lawsuits against her grew exponentially. The sexual harassment case was no longer the only thing she was facing in court. Other lawsuits came to light, involving claims of employee mistreatment, allegations of fraud, and various breaches of contract. The mounting legal troubles began to stretch Blake's resources thin. Her legal team, which had initially hoped to resolve the issues quickly, found themselves overwhelmed by the increasing number of lawsuits. Every day, a new claim seemed to surface, each one painting a more complicated and troubling picture of the actress's business dealings and personal conduct. The stories of mistreated employees and fraudulent business practices shed light on the hidden costs of fame and success. Blake's case serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of maintaining a carefully curated public image at the expense of personal integrity. As the legal battles continue and the lawsuits pile up, it remains to be seen whether Blake will ever be able to reclaim her once glamorous reputation, or if the damage will prove to be too severe to overcome. One thing is certain, the public's perception of Blake Lively has forever been altered, and the road to redemption will be long and fraught with challenges.